Welcome to the Power of Pleasure podcast. I'm your host, L'Oreal, and I'm on a mission to help you embrace pleasure as a lifestyle. This show is a love letter to all the pleasure life has to offer. And each week, I'll be chatting with friends, loved ones, peers, and people I admire about all things pleasure. Through these conversations, I'm giving you the best tools, resources, and tips to help you create a life that is ooey gooey juicy good, one shift at a time. So buckle up and let's get ready for this week's episode. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, beautiful people, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining me today for the Power of Pleasure podcast. I am your host, kink educator, L'Oreal, and today I'm joined with the beautiful and the awesome Emma. She is a joy guide and the owner of RoseJoyCo. Hello there, how are you?
L'Oreal, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, I'm so excited that I had the opportunity to talk to you today. I really loved your message about how to use your inner authority or like your inner compass, your gut feelings to find our way back to happiness and let go of what's not pleasurable. So before we jump into that, I really want you to just take a moment and let the people know about you and who you are and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Emma, and like L'Oreal said, I am a joy guide and I own my own company, and I am a Reiki master. So I'm an energy healer and I'm also a clairvoyant. But what I love to do is help women find their way back to having a more joyful life, finding better friendships and connection with themselves. So a big teaching of mine is working with the inner authority because it's so important. That is what drives us. That's how we find our purpose. And that's how we figure out what's right for us because, society really wants to tell us what we should or shouldn't like or how we should behave. But when we start to get really strong in who we are and what we want, joy comes, pleasure comes, those other things fall away that aren't working for us.
I love that so much. And I think, too, it's really important in this era of like release what doesn't serve you. Like people have taken that to be just cut off everyone and just stop doing everything. And I'm pretty sure that's not what the original intention was behind that. I personally think that the reason people do that is because it's easier, right? Because when we start the journey of finding our joy and finding our pleasure, we often have to take personal responsibility for why we've ended up wherever we're at. Like if we're unhappy in a relationship, friendship, job, whatever, we have to look in the mirror and, come to terms with the decisions that we've made or the energy that we've maintained that has kept us where we are. So in your terms, could you explain what it means to be led by your inner compass and what that looks like?
Sure. So I'm sure you've talked a little bit about this, but your inner compass really is I see it as a Reiki healer. I see it right above your heart and under your throat. So your voice and your heart is what drives your inner compass. So it really is that, we call it a gut feeling or an intuition, an inner knowing. It's that piece of you that says, this is my path forward. This is what I enjoy. This is where I need to go to be better for myself and understand the world better. So an example is, somebody may tell you, you should take this job or you should take on this project. You may be feeling inside, this isn't correct for me. This doesn't feel right. I feel gross. I feel icky about this. But instead of listening to that inner feeling, you say, everybody around me knows better than I do, so I'm going to follow what that person is telling me to do. But really, when you're true in your inner authority, in your inner knowing, you would follow that feeling and say, my head might be saying something else, but my inner authority is saying, no, it doesn't matter what my head's saying. It doesn't matter what people are saying around me. So that's kind of where trusting our inner authority is really comes in. And I can give 5 million examples of this, but one example is a few months ago, someone offered me, because I do some freelance work on the side, somebody offered me this freelance project. And it sounded interesting at first, but I felt almost nauseated when I was thinking about it. And my
Wow.
head kept saying, "What's wrong? You can do this." But my heart, my inner authority was saying, "No, don't do it." So I rejected this. I rejected the project. A few weeks later, I found out there's so much drama in this particular project and around this. And my
Mhm.
inner authority knew. It knew. I didn't have to noodle over what the problem was. It was just, it's not right. Move on. And that's it.
Yeah, yeah. I I can't even begin to count how many times I went against my own inner authority, my own inner knowing, even with the smallest of things, right? Like if I'm driving down the highway and I feel like I need to take another direction, I'm like, no, this way's shorter. And then there's like an accident and I'm stuck in traffic for like an hour. Or, I'm going to go to this restaurant and get blah, blah, blah when I really feel like I should just cook at home. And then they're out of everything that I want. And so I wasted the trip, even small things like that. And so I know what it feels like for me to go against my inner authority. But what are some things that you can point out, in your experience as a Reiki master, having helped so many people with this? What are some ways that you recognize people are disconnected from their inner authority?
Oh, oh man. Well, because I also am a clairvoyant, I can see people's chakras. I can see visions in front of me, scenes.
Mm,
And
mhm,
so one example is a client I have. She used to be very strong in her inner authority because what I have seen for her chakra is actually a fortress around it with a moat. So she was so trusting of herself. She knew who she was. But the last few times I've done Reiki for her, I've seen that chakra completely dried up. So there's no flow of energy through that
mhm,
area. So instead of being this, princess castle, it's become this ghost town. So
mhm.
I've had multiple conversations with her about this and needing to get back to her own knowing. But that's how I can see for somebody else. The other way is just people not knowing where to go, always asking, what do I do? How do I go through this life feeling very chaotic? That's when somebody is disconnected from their inner authority. So I can give you some tips on how to tap into that if you'd like.
Of course, I want the tips.
Okay.
Especially because like there's people, because this is part of the reason why I started this podcast is because people say you teach what you need to learn.
Mhm.
And I was really like deeply grounded in my inner authority last year. But then a lot of things happened that kind of knocked me off my square. And I am in the process of getting grounded in myself again and getting aligned with, who I am, getting aligned with my divine design. And so I know like what I've been going through with starting to rebuild trust in myself, rebuild a connection to spirit or the universe or whatever you want to call it. And I can speak to that specifically, but I'm having people on the show that have different experiences because I want people to see that there's a spectrum to healing. Like
Mhm.
there's not just one way. There's not just one thing to do. And what works for me might not work for them. And that's really important because a lot of times when we're not grounded in ourselves, we are looking for that external validation. And we are looking for someone to, I guess, give us permission to make certain decisions, giving us permission to do something that we want to do or just tell us what to do. I don't know if you've had moments like that where you're like, oh, I just want someone to just tell me what I need to do so that I can move on. But that can be really dangerous. And in my experience, it's often left me feeling even worse in the long run than it was before. And so I think like having tips on how to recognize and trust your own inner authority when you've been disconnected for so long is super important. So all that said to say, yes, tips please.
Yes. And I love how you put that, a spectrum of healing, because it really is. There's no one size fits all. I'm such an advocate for therapy because that's one route of healing, but then you can build upon that and do so many other things in addition. Energy healing's great, but it's one tool in the toolbox. So there's a
Mhm.
lot to be said for all of that. But and I agree with you, L'Oreal, about how it feels when you go against that inner knowing. And I'll just say, I'm 38 now, but up until I was about 30, I let everybody else drive my car for me. Now I'm in the driver's seat,
Mhm.
but for a long time I was in the passenger seat. So I did not even understand what it meant to listen to my inner authority or my gut. But when I moved across the country from Michigan to Colorado without a job, without knowing anybody, the word I like to use is convicted. I was convicted. Nobody could take me off of my path. Nobody could tell me, and a lot of people wanted to, that, what are you doing? You're nuts. This isn't going to work.
Mhm.
And you know what? I moved out here 6 years ago and I'm still here and I'm doing
Mm.
fine. I'm thriving.
Well,
But
congratulations to you.
thanks. It was just I knew it had to happen, but it took a long road to get there. And certainly things didn't get easier when I moved across the country. But let me tell you some tips for the inner authority. And I was taught these by some mentors a few years ago, and it really has driven me to even do it when I'm going to eat something. Like, this is how much I use
Mm.
these tactics now. So one of the ways you can test this out is think about a food that you really love to eat. So maybe say it out loud. Just,
Oh, a food I really love, pizza. I love pizza.
okay. So how does that feel in your body?
It
Describe it
gets
out
it
loud.
gets me it gets me excited. Like I get tingly. Um I also I can't remember what the clear is, but I can start to smell it. Sometimes depending on how bad I want it, I can like actually taste the pizza, and that's sometimes how I decide which place I'm going to order from because they all have a different taste. So like Papa John's tastes different from Pizza Hut. But if I can taste the pizza, I know which restaurant I want to order from.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to test this with a non-food related thing in a second. So I'm
Okay.
curious if you can taste that too. But okay, so now think about a food you really don't like eating. For me, it's lima beans. But think about that, and how does that feel in your
Mhm.
body?
Um, I don't like it. It feels like a because for me I have it's peas, right? So I've had fresh peas before and they weren't horrible, but I haven't been able to get any more, and all the others I've had are like canned and it's just disgusting. And so thinking about that canned peas taste, it's kind of like making my stomach churn a little bit. Um it's just this it feels just nasty in my body. Kind of like my skin is crawling a little bit thinking about it.
So this is the way that you can test a question. So
Mm.
you take those, because they're very contrasting feelings, that
Mhm.
nasty, icky feeling or that excited, salivated feeling. Those, the contrast will answer your question. Those are your yes or no. So is there a question that's been on your mind? Actually, no, I don't want to do a question about eating again. Is there a question you've had on your mind? Like, is there some topic you've been thinking of lately that's a yes or a no?
Um, quitting my job. I've been thinking about quitting my job a lot.
Oh, gosh. I can tell you a story about that if you want to hear mine. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, so actually this is a great one to bring up, because when I've quit a couple jobs now without other jobs, and now I just do my own thing. I'm my own business owner and I do a little bit of freelance work. But when I quit both of those jobs, actually 3 jobs without another job. That's kind of crazy. I knew it. It was a gut feeling of I feel terrible. I was starting to get panic attacks and crying, and I felt like I was being pushed against a wall. Uh, and eventually I said, this is it. I've got to just do this. And the universe actually provided. As soon as I quit, I was able to move forward and get freelance jobs and everything else. So this is a great way to use this trick. So just, it's a yes or no. Should you quit your job? Now ask it out loud and then tell me how you feel.
Okay. I think like I the answer is already coming through so strong. Like before I even ask, do I need to quit my job? Like my whole like I just feel myself just there's like a release, right? So there's like tears that want to flow. And there's like thinking about staying at my job, my shoulders get tense. I feel like my throat is closing up. And a lot of what you mentioned, like just the panic attacks and feeling like you're up against the wall, it's like I know I don't need to be there, especially when they made it very clear that there are no opportunities for me to grow, right? Because as much as I want to own a business, I also have no problem, working a 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that that's something I know that's something I've been battling with for a really long time because I've also quit jobs. Like I used to quit jobs so fast. I used to quit jobs really fast without having another job or like a backup plan. And I think once I left prematurely and things didn't go the way that I thought they would go, and it was just a bad experience. And so I've honestly been afraid to do it again without like having a plan or something else to fall back on. But it's very clear what the answer to that question is.
I love that, but I also understand the terror of it, and that's why. And when I say I quit jobs without another job, it was 6 or 4 months of agonizing about what's next for me. But it got to a point that my mental health and my physical health was so bad that it was almost the universe, even my spirit guides when I was doing my clairvoyant work were screaming at me, what are you doing? Get out of this job. You'll be supported. But I just did not understand how I was going to be supported. And sometimes that's the scariest step is, not having that safety net in front of you.
Absolutely. It's funny to me because I am like part of my divine design is like I'm a very intuitively led person, but I also have a knack for systems and creating structure and planning. And so some of the work that I did when I first started my business, when I went from being a virtual assistant to helping people with operations, like we're doing strategic planning and like we're going to plan out a whole year in your business and what systems do you need to support you. And so my brain just automatically goes there because that's what's familiar and it's what's comfortable. But I also know that that doesn't work for me. Like I'm trying to make that work for me, but I know that operating that way just doesn't work for me. I'm supposed to be one of those take the first step and then the next step will pop up kinds of people, right? And so I'm really working to align myself with that and trust the process. It is not easy at all. It's not easy at all.
No, it's growth every day, trusting the process. I do have another trick for teaching inner authority, but I did want to say that I wonder have you done any visioning or manifesting or writing things down? Because that has helped me a lot to put it out on paper. That way you're still planning, right? You're giving it to the universe, but you're saying, okay, this is what I want. This is what I'm going to work towards. This is how I see my life. So even when it's scary because you're saying, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I'm not sure what the next step is. You can at least say, this is what I vision. And the next step will probably just appear in front of you, almost like a step or a door. But that way you still feel like I don't know. I feel like I always have to have control, which is
Yes.
so,
Yes.
so hard to stop feeling like that. But, that's all the growth that we get to do, is being in the flow and letting things happen the way that they're supposed to. But
Mhm.
at least you're having a little bit of control and saying, this is what I like for my life. It might be better than what you put
Mhm.
down, but at least you have that in front of you, and it makes it a little bit less scary.
Yeah, so my spirit team kind of has to trick me into doing that. So I'm really stubborn. It's like if I don't want to do something, I'm not gonna do it. And it usually ends up with me like being forced to do it, right? And so I'm trying to stop letting things get to the point where I am like forced out of a situation or forced into doing something, because it doesn't have to be that way. So I have been told to journal, right? Like journal, just write your feelings, just write. And I'm like, what tea, blah, blah, blah. And so now that I'm back in therapy and I have all these feelings, and it's I don't think it's a coincidence at all that a lot of the people that I would normally confide in are dealing with their own stuff. They don't have the capacity to, you know what I'm saying, to be my sounding board. And so where do I go? I go to my journal. And so now that I'm writing like every day, sometimes twice a day, journaling, I have the capacity now to start visioning. Like, I don't like this anymore. I would really like this. So I would like to try that. And so I kind of have to right now get tricked into doing that. But I also appreciate it because I'm seeing why. Like, if I am told to do something, it's like, well, why? It doesn't make sense. Like, it's something that has to make sense. But it's like once I start doing it, that's when it becomes clear. So it's kind of I'm in a really interesting space with all of that. Because before, when I was being told to journal, I thought it was stupid, and I really didn't even have. I was in such a bad place that I didn't even have the energy to think about having something better, or like wanting something more. But now that I've started to clear out the clutter and make sense of my feelings and, process through some things, it's freeing up the space and it's like rewiring some things. So now it's like, oh, I think that it would be nice to have this, without feeling guilty or immediately saying, well, that's stupid. That's not going to happen.
That's, I think a lot of people are feeling that way. There's guilt. A lot of women tell me there's guilt around feeling like they could have more or being
Hmm.
happy. And I don't know where that comes from, but I lived most of my until I was 30 feeling like I don't get to have good things. I have to
Hmm.
settle. This is just my life.
Yeah.
This is and there's something to be said for being in flow, but knowing what we want versus letting people drag us through life or just not being driven the way that we want to be driven. Giving things up to the universe, to the path, to the next steps is different than just saying, whatever, I guess this is what I deserve and I don't get anything better. But I totally
Mhm.
understand what you're feeling, because there's sometimes that overwhelm of, this is okay for right now. This is all I can
Yeah.
even imagine, because I can't have
Hmm.
mental capacity for that. So I get that. And the other thing I've learned with journaling is some people don't know how to journal. I didn't for a long time.
Yeah.
I just would write down, I did this today and we did this and that was fun. End of story. But
Hmm.
now journaling is more, here's how I feel. This happened. This is how I'm working. Excuse me, how I'm working through this process. It's a very different method. And that's where healing comes in. And that's where visioning comes in. That's where understanding ourselves comes in, is what I assume is the journaling that you're doing now and that I'm doing
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
There's
So, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say there's another way of journaling that I do and I teach, and I call it emotional art journaling.
Ooh.
And it's not pen to paper, it's crayon, it's paint. it's marker to paper. And so you focus on one project or one feeling that you can't get past. You're trying to overcome it. And you just working through prompts and how do I feel about this, or how can I move through this? You put you put your creative juices onto paper to express your emotions. And so nobody has to know what you're thinking or feeling. You can burn it, you can tear it up afterwards, but it really isn't a releasing process. So I've been doing that since I was young, and I didn't even realize it was healing me until last year when I was able to, I couldn't put my website out. I just was hitting all these walls and all these walls. And I finally did this emotional art journaling for that project. And the next day I published my website because I was able to get through like 6 pages.
That is amazing. And so, like, that, I feel like I love when these moments happen, right? Because I have been putting off getting back into like podcasting and stuff for a while, but it never freaking fails. Every time I interview someone, whether it's somebody I know, whether it's a new person like you know, someone that I haven't met before, it just, things just align so perfectly, right? Like there's always something that I get, and there's something I'm able to give to whoever I'm interviewing, and so I love that. And what made me think of that is, like, I have crayons with me, like right now. I have crayons at my desk. I have been wanting to like color. Like I've printed out coloring pages or whatever because I want to get back into being creative. Like I used to draw pictures. They weren't very good, but I would draw anyway because I like to draw. I would draw pictures. I would do abstract art. I would write poetry. Like I would write poems all the time. And I stopped doing that. Don't remember when. I just kind of stopped, and I have been trying to get back into like creative mode. And I've heard that coloring is a really good way to get back into that. But there's been some hesitation there, and I don't know if it's just um me wanting to make sure that it looks nice, even though it's just for me. So is that something that has ever come up for you, like in your emotional art journey, or just journaling, sorry, or just in general?
Yes, that comes up for me. I mean, because I took art classes through my entire, elementary, middle, high school. And I was always surrounded by people who were very good artists. And I thought I was okay, but I just liked it. I felt like it was healing, it was meditative. So as I do this emotional art journaling now, I just try to get something on paper. It doesn't matter because I know that I can throw it out. But when I first started, well, in my 20s, I didn't understand about energy work at all. So I would do these emotional art journaling things when I was like really angry, and then I would hang
Mhm.
them on the wall. So now I know, don't do that. I kind of
Mhm.
stack them away for future reference, but most people have that perfectionist mentality that
Mhm.
people need to look at it, people need to admire it and be okay with it. But if you go into it with the mindset of I'm going to tear this up afterwards, regardless, you may care less.
Got you. So, excuse me. I know like we've talked about like some different techniques and you know how to connect with your body, your inner authority, and you know I guess how to develop a practice of doing that. But one thing we've kind of touched on this throughout the conversation, and that's the emotions or like the discomfort or the fear that may come up when we are wanting to let go of something that we know isn't for us, whether it's leaving a job or whether it's, you know, leaving a relationship, or maybe, excuse me, it's like distancing yourself from like a family member or a friend or whatever the case may be. And so, how do you recommend navigating those emotions or the discomfort that comes up when we know it's time to release the thing and it feels necessary, but we don't know what's on the other side of that.
Wow, that is a really deep question. And I don't know that I'm actually the expert in this completely, but
Mhm.
what I can say is there's a few pieces of advice I've received over the years regarding this. One is because I do help people build better friendships in their life, find people who bring them joy and make them feel okay for being them. I really am an advocate for the inner authority work and feeling how does this person feel around me? You know, an old friendship, they may not feel good anymore to be around. So the more you're around that person or the more you're at the job you're at, you probably have gotten to a point of saying, this isn't right. Just like you're saying, this isn't right for me, but
Mhm.
what's next? So one thing that I read a while ago, I'm not sure if you're familiar with, she's an author, her name's Martha Beck. She talks about this elevator concept. So when you are leveling up in your life, you are knowing you have to leave friends behind, you have to leave a job behind, you are leaving big pieces of yourself behind. And you can look around on the floor of your life and say, these are all these people that I'm going to have to leave behind. And it's so scary to move up. But what happens is when you get on that elevator and nobody comes with you and you get to the next level, you open the door and you see all of these people who are so excited to have you there with them. So I love
Mm.
that analogy because it brings hope to the fear. Yes, it's scary to leave things behind.
Mhm.
Yes, you don't know what's on the other side. But when you get to that next place in your life, you recognize that you don't want to go back to what you had before. So
Mhm.
that's, I mean, I'm such an advocate for hope because I
Mhm.
live on hope all the time. I don't know what's next. I do work with my spirit team all the time. Sometimes they tell me, do this, it's going to be great, but they don't tell me what it's going to be. So I
Mm.
fight it sometimes and I'm scared, but when you have a vision in your head, when you're working towards something, when you're putting intention towards having a happier life, you can look at your life around you now and say, this feels terrible. I don't
Yeah.
I don't like
Mhm.
this anymore. I don't want to feel this way. So sometimes it's just that matter of understanding and recognizing that things could feel a lot better.
Mm.
And there's a lot of people who talk about manifesting, but I love Abraham Hicks and how she talks about where they, whatever it is, Pastor Hicks, Abraham Hicks. There's that talk of feel it. Feel what does it feel like to have this thing? Really feel it in your body, and that's how you can manifest it. So if you're actively feeling how it can feel to have the thing that you want, to move past those jobs, those friendships, those relationships, when you're actively feeling that contrast, you're going to recognize this is fine. This is good. I'm moving.
Mhm.
I'm done. I can't
Mhm.
I can't live in this feeling of low vibration anymore. I don't
Mhm.
know if that helps and answers your question, but it,
Yeah.
it's kind of a hard thing for everybody
Mhm.
to grasp onto, but that's why I'm such a fan of visioning and manifesting and journaling and
Mhm.
having intention set.
Yeah, I think that's a really good because I will probably ask that question again. um, but like I think that what you said is a really good start. Because like I mentioned before, sometimes we just need to, as it relates to feelings, sometimes we just need to get the feelings out so that we can make room for something else. So if we are feeling depressed, and this is not, as a person that deals with depression, this is not to say that it's not real, that it's not a big deal. And I definitely don't think it's something that you can pray away or anything like that. So this is not to minimize or trivialize that by any means. But when you are having those deep feelings and you're feeling low and you're just feeling like there's no hope, you're just in despair. A lot of times, like when you focus on that feeling, that's all there is. That's all there is. And so sometimes you have to just get it out, right? And so I think that that's where definitely where the journaling comes in, right? Even if you just like, I hate all of this and whatever it is, just getting it out to make room for something else and make room for some other feelings to come in. And I think too, like work that I've, a lot of the resources that I've gotten from um, different like mentors or people that I'm interested in learning from when it comes to manifesting, it is about the feeling. It's about how you want to feel as opposed to what you want to have
Mhm.
because the things may change. The things may change. So, for example, if you want a friendship, like you want a best friend, right? And I'm that popped in my head because I've been seeing a lot of people who are like looking for best friends. Maybe they haven't had one before or they haven't had one in a while. They're like, "Oh, I want a best friend. I want someone that I can do this with and do that with." And it's like, what if we were to focus on the feelings that we got from that person instead of trying to manifest a specific person or a specific kind of relationship. Like maybe there are already people around us who can give us that, but we just weren't open to receiving it at the time. So with that being said, like while we're on the subject of feelings, and kind of backtracking a little bit to feeling like those feelings of, just like nothing is gonna get better. I think that what I know from personal experience that being in those feelings too long can make it really hard to remember what joy feels like or what happiness feels like, what pleasure feels like. And so, what are some misconceptions that you think people have about happiness and what it's supposed to look like or what it feels like that can actually hold them back from experiencing it?
That's another great question. And I wanted to mention too that I've struggled with depression and anxiety my whole life too. So
Hmm.
this process of finding joy was really instrumental in my mental health because it was so hard for me to get out of that headspace. And sometimes it still is of despair. So what I found in the joy process, and this is a little bit off topic, but I will get to your question. In the joy process is having a sense of purpose or having an intention set to finding a little piece of happiness means everything. And I can give you an example. Last year, I was living back in Michigan for a month, and then my boyfriend and I were living in a hotel room before we moved into our house in a completely different area in Colorado. So I was feeling very lonely and very depressed, and I didn't know how things were going to pan out, and I was just really struggling. So I actually got this message from my spirit team to create what I call them a joy cheat sheet. So what a joy cheat sheet consists of is small things that bring you a little bit of happiness. Like right now I have a candle lit. It's like the smallest thing you can do, but it brings me so much happiness. It makes me feel warm and like I'm, embraced. And then there's like weekly things you can do, like going for a bike ride or spending time with a friend, doing an activity. And then there's monthly things you can do. So going on a trip, taking a day to do something interesting or buying a workshop or a class or something that you really want to do. So why I've made it into these three things is so people can understand that joy doesn't have to be this giant thing. Joy is really small increments of happiness. And the other part of that is what I've learned for myself is there's things that I thought brought me joy. And then when I really tap into that inner authority, I recognized, actually, I really hate this. I don't like this at all. But I thought it brought me joy. I thought it was something fun. So for an example, when I went to a festival a couple weeks ago, I thought, this is fun. I want to do this. I was so excited about it. And I got there and then I looked around and I said, I hate this. Why am I here? This is not fun at all for me. But I used to like doing that kind of thing. So
Mhm.
people, I think the misconception is people feel like they need to have a certain kind of fun or they need to find a certain kind of happiness in doing the things that everybody else likes to do. And when we look around, and I term these things adult fun and kid fun. Adult is boring. I think it's boring as heck. A lot
Yes.
of things like networking events, I do them, but I don't like them. There's so many things that we say, this is fun, a dinner party, those kinds of things. Half the time it's not actually fun. We're just
No.
doing them and we're doing adult things. But if I have a trampoline at home. Like if I'm jumping on a trampoline, I'm like, yes, now this is fun. This is kid fun. But so many people and this is where I love helping people, they don't understand how to get to that kid fun. There's so much judgment of themselves, judgment from other people, things that are keeping them from actually having the fun that they want to have. And then there's that
Mhm.
other piece of knowing yourself. There are a lot of people who don't know themselves
Yes.
or know enough that they don't want to tell people. So being vulnerable, I believe, is another part of joy, because if you let people know who you really are, you have better conversations, you do things you actually enjoy doing, and you find friends who love you for you. So there's so
Yes.
much wrapped into that, but that's why, you know, joy, happiness, that's such a big conversation, because we have to give ourselves permission to be us.
Absolutely. I love all of that. And that's another thing too. Like I've been working on the kid fun part because adult fun, it's boring. It is boring. Like I remember once I went to visit my mom or something and I found some applesauce in the refrigerator and I got so excited. I love applesauce, right? But it's like a kid food. Like I don't think I've met any other adult that's like, "Ooh, I like applesauce." Like I love it in the little pouches. Oh my goodness. Yes. Like I those are my favorite ones. And so I found some applesauce. I think it was like my nephew left it over there and I was like, whose applesauce is this? Can I have it? And my mom is like, I don't care. Like, why are you so excited about this applesauce? And my big little brother, I call him my big little brother, he's way taller than me. I'm like 5'3" and he's like maybe like 6 feet. So he's like a giant over me. And he's like, "Bro, you're being really childish right now." And I was like, "No, I'm keeping the joy alive." Like I'm not being childish. There's nothing it's food, right? Like it's food. It's not like, I'm running around in a diaper or something like that. Like it's applesauce and it makes me happy and it's a way for me to connect with my inner child and they're like, "Oh, here she goes," right? Because I'm the quirky, weird spiritualist of the family. And so that's said to say I think just even those small things, like those small little pieces of the kid fun make so much of a difference. Like now I keep applesauce in the refrigerator. Have to have it because it makes me happy. If I'm in a bad mood, I can't be sad and eat applesauce, right?
It's so
Can't be
true.
sad and eat that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love applesauce too. So I will say, you're
Yay.
not being childish. But I did want to mention too, there is a piece of the joy that is curiosity, and
Mm,
in allowing yourself to be excited. Like you were excited about that applesauce, but my boyfriend tells me all the time that I'm act like such a little girl. But it's
mm.
because I'm always, when we're in the car, I say, "What's that? What's this? What do you think that is? Where?" It's all these questions, and he's doesn't ever have any answers for me. But I am always using my imagination as we're driving, just even down the road. I look around, I'm curious. And there is actually research that shows if you have awe, if you have curiosity, if you're out in nature or just walking down the street and you're paying attention to the things around you and focusing on it, you do find better connection, more happiness, and all that. So I've been doing that forever. But the more I'm curious, the more I'm excited about things around me, the more happy I am. So I'm sure you've seen that in your own life too. It's like once you
Mhm.
get started, you can't really stop feeling like that unless you let other people put you down or make you feel like a jerk for
Mhm.
feeling like a child. But you know what? Sometimes you just got to shut those people out. Actually,
Yeah.
most of the time you do, I think,
Yeah.
because so many people are worried about what others think about them, and it's ridiculous. And it
Yeah.
stops us from doing the things we want to do because we're worried about other people.
And it's all like part of the programming, you know. Like a lot of us learn from an early age to like dim our light or like behave a certain way so that people will like us or
Mhm.
so they'll want to be friends with us so they'll be nice to us, and then it's 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 jarring, you know, once you get older and you stop doing those things and people are like, you're being weird, but really you're being who you really are. And those people never had a chance to get to know the real you because you've been living outside of yourself for so long. And so I think that's really, really important. Excuse me.
Yeah, I agree. I have a good friend who I just absolutely love her, but she exudes joy. And we were in the airport a few months ago and she was stretching. She's doing these stretches in the airport while we were waiting for our bags. And I was trying to shut it down because I was worried about guys looking at
Mhm.
us or feeling, awkward. But I was upset with myself later on because I thought, she's exuding joy. She's doing the things she wants to do. She's better at this than I am, And then she was like, we were out in the snow one time and she was rolling around in the snow. I, I thought, what the heck are you doing? But it makes me so happy just to even think about her doing that. She doesn't care what people think about her in that way. And it's amazing because she really finds more joy than I think I find sometimes because she's already tapped into that part of herself. But so many people are too scared to even like dance or do any of
Yes.
those things. And I don't love dancing in front of people, but I was even dancing to Lizzo before I got on this call because I
Good.
was like, I gotta dance a little bit and elevate my mood and let my stress down a little bit. But some people just won't even do that in the privacy of their own home.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So I have so many more questions that I want to ask. But we're getting down to the wire, and like I could seriously talk like all day. Um, but you know, I think that this has been an amazing conversation. And another thing that I wanted to ask you, right? Like you are a joy guide and you help people, you know, to really reconnect with themselves and figure out like what it's going to take for them to be happy and have joy. And so of everything that we've talked about, which has been a lot, if you could pick one key message that you hope listeners will take away from today's conversation about like joy and pleasure and like reconnecting to yourself, what is one thing that you'd like to leave the listeners with today?
Well, what I want to leave everyone with is joy is personal. So, figuring out your inner authority, learning to trust yourself more, will connect you with what brings you more joy and what you may want to leave behind. The more
Mm,
tapped into it you get, the more you trust yourself, the the better you're going to feel about your life and the way that you're moving forward in it.
that is beautiful. Like it's so like simple and just succinct and straight to the point, and I love that. Okay, so when it comes to pleasure in your own life, what does pleasure feel like for you?
Well, when you were describing eating pizza, it kind of feels like that to me, where it's an overwhelming sense of excitement, the butterflies in my chest, of my heart feels warm and full, and I just feel happy to be alive. Like everything
Mm.
is amazing. I'm excited to wake up in the morning and just that general feeling. But I love to describe joy, kid joy, as ear to ear grinning fun. Because if you are grinning
Mm.
ear to ear, no matter who you are having a great time. And that's how it feels for me, whether I'm, sprinting down a trail really fast, or I'm skipping, or I sound like a child right now, jumping on my trampoline, any of those things, they just make me so happy. And it's also a sense of freedom too. I think freedom
Mm.
is a really good word to use in conjunction with joy.
I love that. And I listen, I don't have a problem with skipping. Like they don't make the skip it toys anymore, but I found something similar to that at Target and it lights up. And so I got one for me and like my two youngest daughters. My oldest daughter was like absolutely not. But my two youngest daughters, we all have one and so we'll just get in the living room cuz we got rid of our couch and so we have like all this open space and so we'll get in here and all three of us will just skip around like with the lights off and everything's lighting up on the floor. Great time. So I get that and I'm here for the kid fun.
I'm going to get one of those now.
Ooh, let me know how you like it. I can't remember what it's called, but it looks exactly like a skip it, but it's not called that. And so the second to last question that I want to ask you is what is the top pleasure principle that governs your life?
Mm. Wow. I think it's connection with myself, connection with
Mhm.
others, feeling like I'm a part of something. If I feel like I'm disconnected from other people or the world, I don't operate very well. So it's
Mhm.
being able to forge bonds with other people and have great conversations and just feel good about who I am too. So I know that's kind of a big one, but connection really is what drives me. In the
Mhm.
Strengths Finder test, everything is connection for me. So
Mm.
it's really important. I don't think I would operate well without relationships in my life.
I think that's beautiful. And I think, a lot of people would be surprised, if they took the time to do the work to figure it out. Because I've seen where a lot of people they're like, oh, I don't like being around other people. But it's really because they're dealing with things internally and they don't have the capacity to be around other people. But when they're doing that work, it's easier for them to be around people and they get energized being around people. And so it's like, oh, I wasn't introverted after all. I was just in crisis or whatever. And so I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, I think, well, that's my Find Your Tribe program is all about helping people heal themselves so that they can connect with others again. It's such
Hmm.
an important part of the journey. You can't just make friends, you have to make friends as a healed or somewhat healed person.
Absolutely. Okay. So this has been so much fun and I can't say thank you enough for taking a step to like talk to me because we've never, met each other, we've never talked before. And so I was super nervous, but I really appreciate your time today and this has been better than I even thought that it could be. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you, L'Oreal. And you know what? I did a little bit of creeping on you and I saw it. I saw your website and I said, "Oh, I'm going to love her. This is going to be great." So I was less nervous.
Awesome. Well, that makes me so happy. I really appreciate that. And so before I let you go, like, do you want to just take a moment and let people know where they can find you? Like, I'm going to have your website and stuff in the show notes, but how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and Facebook, RoseJoyCo. And also my website is rosajoyco.com. And if you are interested, people can come on to the website and get my joy cheat sheet and my friendship roadmap to start their journey of finding new friends and their journey back to joy. And you can get that for free by subscribing to my newsletter.
Wonderful. Thank you so, so much. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your energy with me and the audience today. And I look forward to hopefully having another conversation in the future.
I would love it. Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on this week's episode of the Power of Pleasure podcast. Make sure to check the website, powerofpleasurepodcast.substack.com. On the site, not only will you find some blog posts and other helpful tools to help you continue the mission, you'll also be able to access the show notes as well as any social links and resources from this week's guest. While you're at it, if you found this information valuable, which I'm sure you did in some way, go ahead and take a few moments to leave a rating or review wherever you're listening to this episode and share out on social. I hope to see you next week for another episode of the show. And in the meantime, in between time, go out and do one thing today to help you embrace pleasure as a lifestyle.